Hello. I was so sure I was going to be late coming back, but 3 minutes. Yeah, that's better than 10. How are you today?
I'm good. Andrew's here. Good, Andrew. And there's Peter.
Very good.
How
Hi.
was the meeting? Good. Did
Yeah,
you make some good contacts?
it was extremely good and quite interesting for us. So I'll publish our agenda. Hang on, I'm just going to do. Oops. I just added it to the agenda as a post this document. Posting. I'll put a link in here as well. There it is. And as Dini said, how is everyone?
Good.
Morning. Good.
Great, they were able to repair my frames. I have my glasses that are optimized for my headset size. It's just wonderful. Well, good news.
Good.
Yeah, that is very good and very important. Indeed. Right, so I'm just going to ask you, Andrew, I'm not skipping around the agenda too much, but is there a new pushed update today or not?
There's not. No.
Yeah, that's fine.
I tried my best. I thought I might have something, and then I ran into a big unexpected bug like 30 minutes before I clocked out. I was like, this isn't happening. Yeah. It was like 10 p.m. and I was still working, and I was like, I can't get this working in time.
Yeah, that's that's the world. Um, oh, hang on. On this little agenda, do you all have the agenda up?
Hmm.
Please, one second. Please reload. I just made a mistake on the top there. So I just really want to suggest that you have a look at the Gucci thing. Have you had a chance to do that yet? Anyone?
Mm-mm. I won't
Okay.
get to it till this weekend.
Oh
It's my
yeah,
next time.
that's absolutely fine. Obviously, it's yeah, it's just another kind of thing. And of course, same with Polycam. And then further, Dini, you posted a really nice piece on collaboration from the New York Times and Slack. And for similar reasons and aesthetic reasons, I really think you guys should watch The Bear if you have a chance.
I tried watching it. It's just too. I have you ever waited tables, Frode, in a five-star restaurant?
I have never, and I could never. I know my limitations.
Oh, I have, and I was a sommelier in the one of the two top restaurants in Dallas, and we had a chef that was from Alsace, and he would chase the waiters with a knife into the dining area because they had messed up an order or they didn't give him the right respect. So I grew up, I mean, I spent my formative college and post-college years, graduate years, in a restaurant like the Bear. I watched one episode and went, no, no. But what was his name? Philippe something. Anyway, he was crazy. He was just crazy, but brilliant.
The Bears pilot is different from the rest. It
Okay,
does
well,
it does get quite hectic, but there's also an incredible little other story. But that's neither here nor there. I see Rob is joining. Are you there, Rob?
yeah, there's Rob coming in.
I'm trying to.
Good, good. Oh, we can hear you. That's
The
good.
people I know, Frodo, the people I know that waited tables, all are like, that hits too close to home. That one hurts.
It's a reason I got 10 Emmys. It is
Yeah, I'm sure.
very high pressure. I
I
mean,
think this, I think Secession is more fun.
yeah, I can't watch that. I don't like people being nasty to each other.
You don't think the bear is nasty?
No, because I've now seen a lot more. So the context has come out. In the beginning, yes, it was like, what in the world is this? But it does have also some very beautiful moments. The very first episode of season three, for instance, is just almost like random poetry. There's absolutely no stories, just bizarre. Anyway, right. Southampton update. I just rushed back from Southampton. I was there because of contacts I made when I did the XR day, where I showed some of our work, met people, chaotic and messy as Southampton always is. They meet people I met today. One of them is from the Department of Education type thing of pedagogy, learning, all of these good things. He's been very pushy on this collaboration. And another guy, Spanish scientist, neuroscientist, who does brain scanning. And it was an hour meeting, and it was it was beautiful. I'm hoping these guys will join us on Mondays. Anyway, the upshot of it all is that we want to study the effect of work in XR. So we want to build an environment and have someone do it on traditional display. Oh, nice clouds, Rob. And also to work in an optimized XR environment to see the cognitive load difference. So they don't have that much experience with XR. So I'm going to go down another day. We're going to start sketching and doing all kinds of good things. But the reason I think it is exciting for us as well is they are very naive to the, sorry, I forgot to put on Do Not Disturb because I'm being disturbed like crazy. Right. The whole notion of working in XR, they're very naive in a good way about it. So I think that could do some, if it happens, it could be maybe useful for us. Maybe we'll collaborate as a group, I don't know. But just the whole idea of producing a paper that says, when working on this task in a traditional screen or in XR, where it's not just a big screen in XR, it's a bit optimized, the difference is thus. Because they literally scan. Now, the last thing I'll say, the scanning method they use, it's one of those head cap things, and it shows if you do a learning task, we have new people, novice people, they do this task, then you can see who doesn't have it. You can see the behavior that it hasn't gone into their deep learning, which is really bizarre, because if you then test in a few weeks, the new learners of this particular task they used will be as good as the thoroughly good learners. If you're on the outside, you can't see the difference, but the brain scan shows that it hasn't really melded with them yet. It's still superficial learning that they could forget. It hasn't become part of who they are. That kind of blows my mind. That they can, so what they can do is present learning tasks, and they can see by the amount of effort being used by the person whether this is something they really understand or if they're just struggling through. It's fascinating. Right. Any questions on that?
Well, how are you going to be, what is your role in this? That sounds really interesting. As I said to you yesterday, what's going to be your role in this?
I don't know. I expect I might be the XR guy because they don't know many others. So, that's where that is. The experience we're developing here is useful for them to learn from. And I did say, what kind of money are we looking at? Because they are good at going out, finding bids and doing bids and all of these things in their environment here in the UK. And they said they don't know yet. So what we'll do, get together a plan and then scale it based on the opportunities that we see. Because I said to them that we spent 6 months and we've done some things really well, and some of it will be open source that they can use, such as really, really good hand tracking behavior. So they need to understand that if you're doing this, it is building the world from scratch at the moment. There isn't that much there. So it's not like they can have a couple of 100,000 and in 6 months do reasonable environment. So
was this a meeting? Was this a like an exploratory meeting to figure out what direction to go, what kind of funding to go after?
Exactly.
How many people are going to be on the team?
They've also invited a philosopher, Paul Smart, but he is a cognitive philosopher. The work that he's doing comes from deep brain stuffs. Mm-hmm. And they were also referring to the digital humanities and all of those people. So I'm really glad they're not all, these are not simple people. One of the things that came up early in the discussion is the importance of emotion in learning and where that, the pathways that take. And we were then discussing things like learning in very, very different environments based on how you emotionally feel about those environments. So yeah, really, really quite special. And
so who's going to be the lead PI in this?
I hope not me, because I may have noticed from you, Dini, that being the lead PI is a lot of overhead. Thank you for what you're doing for us. I hope it will be this guy, Nick, who is the education guy. He seems to be very suited for this. You know, he's the one who's really pushing for it. I hope that I can come in there and help provide an optimized, amazing XR environment based on the learnings we're doing here, feed back into what we're doing next year. So it's just an outlet for what we are learning here as a group, and just the fact that it'll be sticking a thing on someone's head to see if it's any good. How awesome is that? I mean, could you imagine if in a year or two, when we're doing another paper, another piece of work, can cite this work showing that when dealing with this particular knowledge task, cognitive load is reduced by 30% or whatever. You know, that's pretty cool. Oh, so hang on. We were talking about kind of deep learning, and by deep learning, it's not a real term. I'm just using it for my simple little brain. There's a difference between learning a skill and learning. They talk through all of these things. So when you learn something that changes who you are, it goes from learning to being, right? So we could spend literally hours on the discussion today, and I hope to introduce these guys to our group for our Monday meetings. But the notion of what learning is to them is not a knowledge graph on a computer that's objective and this is this. It is a lot deeper. And the notion that I've submitted to the ACM Human paper about the importance of personal context to kind of, in a fun way, to destroy the notion of accessibility, that who you are has to be brought into how the knowledge is with you. You know, these are all the kinds of ideas that fit together with them, but we're trying to simplify it for beginning. Knowledge task, flat screen, XR, which one makes your brain work harder?
You know, it's interesting you say that because my first master's is in education. I had to take educational philosophy. And there's an educational philosophy that called progressivism, and another one called reconstructionism. And progressivism is the belief that you progress, you grow with time, and education helps to facilitate that. Reconstructionism posits that we can reconstruct our being, like we can change who we are through educational experiences. So it's not necessarily progressive, but it changes us. So you could be on a bad trajectory, progressively bad, and reconstruction can redo your whole way of seeing. So a lot of folks the reason why education is so liberal in the United States is that most educational people that come out of these kinds of training believe in progressivism and believe in reconstructionism. That's just at the heart of education here in America. And it's hard to come out of that conservative. So if anybody ever, like, if a conservative person in the States asks me, why are universities so liberal? It's because education philosophy kind of posits these theories that we find to be true in our teaching, because we see our students change. On the other hand, there are students we can't touch. They're just always, there's a couple of students that are on Instagram right now that are former majors of ours, who are posting anti-Kamala stuff, like really ugly stuff, like really, really ugly stuff about her on Instagram. And I look at these two young men, I think, I love you. Why are you doing this? You're in my classroom. Andrew, it'd be such a shock for you to see this, who they are. But Holly and I are like, oh my God. So we didn't get to make a mark on them at all. They're still pretty ugly online.
Yeah, no, and Dina, you would have loved it there today. It's a shame you're on the other side of the planet, but I'll try to get more dialogue into our environment on this, because, yes. On our schedule, though, here, I really want to move one thing around. So, Andrew, you know what? Why don't we have a look at what you have now, if you don't mind? I may have some. Do you guys mind if we spend a few minutes on Andrew's current?
No.
Okay.
You talking about last week's update?
Yeah, whatever is under the live button, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be last week.
Yeah. Good. So,
Yeah, like I mentioned last week, it's more of a kind of a scattered dev update from last week. We've got components and they don't really interact with one another, but you can see them.
Well, this is so annoying. I had an OS upgrade again. I'm on the beta, and absolutely nothing appears when I'm in it. I can see the room, but no controls. Gonna have to restart. While we're doing this, just I wanted to give an update. I forgot to write it down on the LaTeX exports from author. So it's going well, and Mark Anderson's fury at the nonsense with all these things, I am understanding more and more because, yeah, I mean, LaTeX is basically an extraction set. So it gets pretty odd, but we're working on it, and I'm not sure if it's relevant to the wider work we're doing here, but hopefully at
You know what I
least.
think it is? Let me just say that both he and I mean, he's working so hard with the ACM hypertext papers, right? And so he submitted our paper to TAPS and did all the things he needed to do, and it's still kicking back. And so all the work with metadata, whether it's latex or whatever, it's just so arcane, right? And you can't, I just think he's so frustrated with what's going on in the hypertext world right now that he just can't bear it anymore, right? And he has
Oh,
every right to be upset because metadata should be useful, but it can be an obstacle, I guess is the best way of saying it.
yeah, I mean it's not even the metadata, it's the data, period. It's just a mess. And also it's not properly documented. Oh, was that mine? Okay, I think it may be restarting. Very good. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm in. Anyone else in who is head setting at the moment?
I'm in.
There's a rectangle with two horizontal lines in it. Oh, okay, it's beginning. Oh, right, it's filling in. It was just drawing slow.
Was it still generating?
Yeah, sticking it a bit.
I have a huge.
Yeah, it has to draw everything from online because it's referencing the online HDM papers. So any sort of network delay will also affect loading time.
What I can see here now is I have the black text in the background with the titles, and then I have a huge amount of articles showing abstracts in white text and white rectangles. That's unexpected and very cool.
But yeah, like I said, it's just kind of every component in the space at the moment because I was developing. Things weren't connected yet. So it's kind of there. You can move things around, but it's not gonna work.
No, but it's no, but this is really fun to see it, even though it's not connected. Oh, okay, so this one just goes bloom bloom right now, right? The wrists.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything there yet because we want to turn it into like a helper of some sort, but we don't have that yet. So it just opens and closes.
So now that I have been inspired by this conversation today about this stuff, I'm just going to ask some questions, Andrew, okay? Um, I'm now looking at one of the smaller units, Sideways 2022. Looks really, really nice with the white text, light gray background. How are you, just to remind me, how are we currently thinking of bringing that forth into a more close reading distance? Is that going to be one of the things on the hand, do you think?
I don't know. That was something you guys were designing, I thought, but I could brainstorm some ideas.
Anyone else have any thoughts on how to do the focus mode? Oh, I have a related question before we answer that, Andrew. I have now moved sideways, blah, 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 7 international. So I have one thing in front of me, but when I move my hand over to do a command on my other hand, I'm obviously still not pointing at this. Will it still know that that was the last selected thing and it's therefore in computer terms in focus?
No, that was what I've been saying for quite a while. It's
Thank you.
there's no way of selecting a document and then applying functions to it because it's too arbitrary. Everything just triggers when you select it, which we can change that design, but we don't have an alternate design pitched. So it currently just doesn't have any way of interacting. So the menu works for things that are universal, like show and hide all of this or things like that. But we don't have a way of applying it to individual like elements in the space.
Yeah, thank
If we
you.
can come up with some concept for that, then fantastic. Maybe like a check mark or something. I don't know. It seems kind of boring.
Well, the way that you've implemented this personally, I think is really quite beautiful. And I wouldn't mind if there was in the bottom of one of these things quite literally a button that says focus and it pulls it forward. Because as we've learned in XR, you don't want top on the stuff on the top of a window, you want it at the bottom.
Yeah, I had a little focus button on the documents for a while, and that's what it did. It got removed with the last visual update, but I can add it back in if we'd like. I think it worked nicely.
Yeah, I think so. Dini, what do you think? Does that sound like a good
Yeah.
do?
Andrew, what would it take to get that back on?
Well, I have the code still there. I just removed the button, so it wouldn't take that long.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to keep the functions even if they're not being used, just because it doesn't hurt to keep them in the code. They're not really wasting any processing power because they never trigger.
Yeah.
So it's useful in this case.
So what I would like to ask all of you, the documents now with the gray, same gray, and the inside the bits as the background. When you go into focus mode, should we make the background a tad darker for slightly higher contrast?
Yeah, I do kind of like the idea of changing the background shade of it. That's cool.
It was really fun watching that right now, Andrew. It made me think of a Star Wars movie. You know, you go into a junkyard and they make magic. So we got to walk into your junkyard right now and see everything all over the place. So it's a bit like, wow, this is very cool.
Andrew, what are you currently, what is it, where are you currently in your work? Like, what did you get before the bug hit?
Yeah,
What were
so I have the interactions almost fully done for the menu, at least for the base interactions. So we've got just the base menu appears and you can toggle between the um, different catalogs. They're all sorted. And then in the catalogs, you can get the actual abstract previews. Right now, you're seeing all of them, but just the specific correct one will show up when you select. It's got some nice lines that highlight everything. You could do the whole drag the titles out, and then they sort of snap back. Then if you drag them far enough, they then spawn the abstract there instead of just next to it, which is also its own floating element that doesn't disappear when you move to other ones. So all that stuff's working pretty nicely. The problem was the by author catalog completely broke. And I don't know why, because it was working last week, and then I didn't touch it, and now it's broken. So I got to figure out what went wrong, because clearly some other function I changed has been affecting it, and I don't know where. That'll be a lot of troubleshooting on Thursday. But it was almost at a stage where we could really play with it. So I was pretty disappointed to find that.
So maybe next Wednesday we'll be able to see what you've been working
Oh
on.
yeah, absolutely next Wednesday. I might have it Monday, actually. We'll
That'd
see
be
how
good.
things go. I mean, I don't know if we want to go through it Monday, but I might just have it published Monday, and then we could go through it either Monday or Wednesday, depending. I know Monday isn't really for the project.
I'd like to raise my hand on that and say absolutely on both aspects of what you just said, because I do think it benefits the wider community to see updates if they want. And if we have is something like 15 minutes on Sloan in the beginning, if there is a useful update, but it's 15 minutes and then we stop, that might be a good idea. Danny, what do you think of that?
Sure.
We almost don't want to, um, oh, what's the word? Have them suffer by not experiencing it, so to speak. It's great. It's great work.
Cool. Well, yeah, if I can get it working then on Thursday, I'll get the update pushed for Monday. How about that?
Danny, happy?
That sounds wonderful.
Danny, happy. I like Danny, happy.
Works
I'm
for me.
not good at making it happen very often, but I do love Danny, happy. Sorry, was there something from you, Peter? I'm just in another window here.
Oh, I was just saying it works for me. Sounds like a good idea.
Excellent. I'm just doing a cool thing here. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to do the focus button real quick so we can all have a look and agree or disagree. Should be just a few more seconds. Anyone else have anything at this point?
At some point, I'd like to be able to bring up the rest of the project on Wednesdays, and that would be like the student competition, updates on the symposium, where we are with the inviter, people we're inviting. I'd like for us to talk about the book a little bit more. So if there's time next Wednesday, I'd like to have categories. So we have the
No, I was just saying that's absolutely. I was just giving you a thumbs up to say I agree
project,
with
yeah,
you.
the project, the symposium, the book. And that way we can talk about all three going forward. It's going to get more important as we get, I mean, right now we're focused on Poland. Get stuff done for Poland. Get to Poland, right? But when we get back, we want to hit the ground running for the symposium really hard. And so, if we can just begin to think about those entities. A lot of work's been done on the symposium logistics already. What I'm trying to do now that we don't have Vint coming, it's harder to sell.
We don't know that. We just don't know. He just cannot tell us one way or another, which is equivalent to him not coming. I agree with you.
Yeah, I can't go out and ask for funding easily. I mean, I can still do it. It was easier when I said, hey, I have Vint Surf coming. But we don't have any big names coming now. And so it'd be nice to have one, and we've talked to Doug Wishkoff. We've talked to who else? We've toyed with the idea of Ted Nelson, but he would be very disruptive.
No,
I don't know who
Ted's
else
going to be in
invite.
Japan, unfortunately.
Who?
Ted Nelson will be in Japan.
Yeah. But it'd be nice to have one big name coming to help out with
Well,
getting some funding.
it depends what we mean by big names. James Hendler is coming. He is massive in the data metadata world. He worked a lot with Tim Berners-Lee and so on, but not well known enough for university or funder people. No. By the way, the next item on the agenda is Mondays, Deanie. Should we do your schedule in here? Your suggestion?
Can I finish having this conversation? I want to.
Oh, sorry. I just meant to say what you. Yeah. Okay.
I didn't want. I'm not quite through yet. Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, Peter. I'm 70. I don't know how much longer I've got. You're younger. But I'm saying that it's got to be somebody that the Portland, Vancouver, Seattle tech community can get behind. Vint Cerf is a name. Berners-Lee is a name. People like that are names. They can say, oh my God, yeah. So it's got to be someone whose name is recognized. And we don't have anyone like that coming currently. Even Doug Rushkoff is not a name in that context. But he's been here before and people know who he is. We've had him here. So if there's anybody that you know that could come in and do this, that'd be great. If not, we're going to be a little bit strapped. I'm going to ask my university for funding for lunch, and that will take some pressure off of us, but that still brings in paying for breakfast. I've already priced everything out. So breakfast and then the 2 breaks. And then we have money for that evening dinner, that event, right? The reception.
Yeah, absolutely. I am still looking into that. Briefly, the image I just uploaded here in Zoom, does that look like a reasonable focus button?
Okay.
Just so we don't drop that item, sorry.
Here,
You want
it's
a
great.
focus button on the abstract box?
Does the abstract box not represent the little thing popping up?
Yeah, I mean it does, but that turns into the document. Wouldn't you want to focus I guess you could focus the little preview box, sure.
Well, this
I
is the
just
thing.
thought that was more for organization and stuff.
We've gone through this many, many times, and I think it is a useful thing to go through. Now that you have done it, they were really nice, but I would like to read the abstract a little closer and a little more contrasty itself.
Sure. Okay. That's not a problem.
But then
I'll
I'm
look into how I can get that working. This was different than what I thought we were talking about before. The document focuses. I don't have this capable of focusing at the moment, but I'll get it working.
well. Let me ask Dini then. Dini, as an academic coming into this particular room, you tap on a thing, you get this pop-up of the abstract name and whatever. Would you maybe also want to have a hide or I like this button here to do the 2 most basic annotations, or do you want to open the full paper first?
We already had, I thought we've had this discussion, right?
Yeah.
What does the design doc say?
The design doc does it a bit later. The reason I'm questioning now is because Andrew has implemented this and it looks really, really nice. So I find that the abstract looks much more useful now that it's implemented than what we had before. Before it was almost like a nonsense thumbnail by my design. I think he's made it just more real and useful.
Andrew, what would it take to implement this change to our design doc, to our design? What kind of timeline?
Uh, um, let's see. Just adding the focus button and the focus functionality. I'll do that in a few hours, maybe like half a day of work.
Okay.
It would also give us a place to put other functions. It's like right now we can't close these abstract boxes once we create them. So it might be nice to have a way of doing that. So we can also put close down there. It does solve one of our other problems at the same time. Um, so yeah, I think it'd be beneficial enough for the minimal amount of time it would take for me to implement.
All right. So Frode, you want to add that to the design doc so we know that he's adding that? Because we're going to turn the design doc into the Sloan Foundation. So whatever's in that doc is what we're saying we made. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. Rob and Peter, you have any perspectives on this?
Can I also mention we're going to be demoing, right? So we finally got the demo through TAPS. I got notice this morning that it's in. I'm going to be looking at the article and approving it, so I'll do that today. But we also have us, according to the Sloan Foundation, testing at the event, right? So we're going to be there testing, and Rob is coming to Poland, and he's going to be one of our people helping us with testing. So Frode, you and I need to develop a testing tool. Like what questions do we ask of these people as they're walking through the project? And then we can create I can have Greg create a little interactive document for an iPad, put it on an iPad, and they can just simply go through and answer questions. And Rob could be one of the people facilitating that.
Yeah, we definitely need to do that. Peter?
Yeah, I would want to ask them questions related to what their assumptions are before they've experienced the demo, and then ask them afterwards, how their assumptions have changed having experienced the demo.
Yeah, that sounds very good. Hang on, I'm changing a thing.
Peter, are you going to be in Poland? Are you coming?
No, I have elder care responsibilities and I really can't travel.
That's fine. I totally get it. I'm just asking. Okay, so Frode, maybe you and I can meet next week and start to develop that tool. And that will give Greg time to get that kind of coded up.
When you mean tool, what do you mean? Do you mean like a survey and so on? Or
Survey, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when we do testing, when we do usability testing in our projects, we teach usability, right? Testing in our classes. We have a usability class. When we develop those surveys, it's what we let people go through when they're going, here's a series of things we want you to experience and then give us feedback. So it's a way to pull in data and then go back and refine our design. And the refining is going to be between when we get back from the conference to the time we get to the symposium.
Oh, absolutely. It's just tool is used very differently in different aspects. No, absolutely. I completely agree. Andrew, you're asking close and hide. No, what I mean here is, and I really need Dini to tell me whether she agrees or not. The hide and pin are tags. So hide would not show it in the list. Pin it would, not necessarily with our current design, but it would show to the system that you think this is a special paper.
Wait, are you talking about having that affect the titles in the catalog and not just the actual abstract that you're clicking on?
Yes, but it doesn't have to be functional. Doesn't have to be functional, right?
Okay.
No,
I don't like adding stuff that doesn't do anything, but I get what you're saying.
This can be removed. This is just a piece of JPEG. So what I need to know from Dini, as not the project manager, but as a user, academic, when you open up and you have the abstract in front of you, would it be useful to be able to say, this is not interesting, I want to hide it, or this is really interesting, I want to pin it? Is that even useful for you?
I can't imagine why. I mean, why not just leave it in the list and ignore it?
Because the list is quite long. So the idea is just that, nope, nope, nope. And then you have the ones that you think are within what you want to read. Because even our own hypertext conference is going to be papers that are completely outside of our interest. Why keep them in the list? That's my perspective, and I'm not trying to push it on you. I would just want to see how it reflects on your experience.
Well, it's not, let me say this, let me step back for a second. It's not in the design doc currently. And so if we're going to add it, I'd like to add it later. What I think is useful, though, is what you mentioned about having something at the bottom that has close, right, or focus. That would make sense. But the other part, that doesn't make sense right now. Not right now.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll just point out because it's so easy to spawn these abstract files, like these elements, there's no point in hiding an element. But if the element is directly referencing the title and you select hide in the abstract, it then hides the title in the catalog. I at least see where you're coming from, but it feels like the wrong place to put the button to me. Because as a user, I wouldn't expect hiding an abstract to hide the title. Um,
that's absolutely fine.
I don't know.
No, that's absolutely fine. I put up a new design that's missing that. Dini didn't think she desperately wanted it now, and she's our closest test case on this. So there's no need to discuss it further. The problem with me, Andrew, when I see a further development, I think of what else we can do, and that is not the right thing to do at the moment.
No, that's called scope creep.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But I can say that when we're testing this, I mean, this is something we test for. So are there other things
We
you'd like
just
to
did. We asked Dini. That's testing.
No, I'm talking about the hypertext conference. When we're there testing with a bunch of people, we can ask, what other elements would you like to see? And it doesn't have to be something we do in year one. It could be year two, right? So that's what we gather. We gather more data to figure out how to refine our work as we move forward with the project.
Absolutely. Now, I have the survey for writing. If you guys could do that at some point, talking of which, that's my instrument. So whenever it's just to find out writing preferences. Dini, you've kept me up for 2 nights now with your comments on why you have to use Word. It's really interesting provocation. Right. The next thing, because we're happy with this now, we're happy with close and focus, right?
I think so.
Okay, so the next thing,
Please.
yeah, next thing on the agenda is the Monday meeting schedule. Do you have what you have on that already, Dini?
We're so far past what I put down 3 weeks ago that I don't even know where we are anymore. I don't have anything set up. I kind of threw it out.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to say this. Let me say this to everybody. I totally get that folks don't want to read and have a reading session on Mondays. No problem. And what's been working, and let me say this, Frode, you have been so successful with your Monday meetings. You have had years of success with it. I don't want to rock the boat. I really like what you're doing. We do not have to do anything beyond that. So please just let's continue the way you've been doing it because it's perfect, it's brilliant, and it gathers people together. If you want to do a theme like you invite somebody, and they come and talk, that's great. But I think a reading session, that's not going to work. Folks don't want to read, and that's okay.
I'm not 100% sure about that. I know where you're coming from because we've discussed this, of course, you and I. Let's just do a balance, but not right now because it is summer holidays. So people like Fabienne, who has a great roster of people to invite, is just not here. So we will get back to that. We'll get back
Where's
to that.
Fabienne, by the way? Did he go on vacation?
Yeah. He sent some picture from some mountain thing, and I tried to look at the metadata to find out where he was, but of course he's clever enough to have scrubbed it.
Well, he's French. I mean, the whole month of August is gone. What about Leon? And where's Leon?
He put something in either Slack or Twitter about some travel thing as well. So I'm not sure where that is. There's some of them still use the Twitter group, which isn't perfect. Okay, so then we can move on to the metadata thing. And here is a really big thing. And I really need your brains 100% on this, not that you don't give it the rest of the time, because this is very different. We've talked about binding a lot, right? And I think the notion of binding, meaning having one document that says what other documents should be in it, can be really, really, really important.
Say that again one more time. Run that by me.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to. And please stop me as many times as you want, because this is very weird and different. The notion of a binding, in a physical world, we have a folder, a binder. In there, you put pieces of paper. So this folder is a separate entity from the papers it contains.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, an academic paper from a conference is a paper inside a binder or a folder called proceedings. They can exist independently, or the paper can exist inside this. This folder or binder can have information such as a title. It could even have a cover page. It can have a lot or a little, but essentially it is a choice by some human or system to say, here's a collection of papers that belong together. So I'm now talking explicitly from now on about the notion of binders and PDF. I'm not including HTML because HTML requires images to be stored separately. So that is why for the purposes of this, it is different. So I looked at our own use. We have on our webpage some foundational documents, design documents. We have all kinds of stuff, which can be changed at any point. And then we kind of forget where it was. We have all these things. And then I go back to Doug, obviously my mentor. He had the notion of a journal where you basically just put stuff in and you can't do anything with it. So what I'm thinking here is a couple of things in connection. Number one, the proceedings we're working with is that there is a set of documents that are, and I have to close the window, they're playing tennis next door, sorry. Yeah, playing tennis when we're talking, so rude, right? Okay, so that is what the proceedings is. Now also, Danny and I have been talking a little bit about the notion of our book, The Future of Text Volume 5, being technically put together as a binder as well. So there should be no difference technically between The Future of Text 5 and the proceedings. Meaning that if I do the job on the outside world data correctly and give Andrew what he requires to load up our own book or the proceedings should be identical. That makes sense, right?
I mean, I thought the feature of text, I mean, you had argued before that people that come to the symposium are giving papers that go into the book, and that the book is a set of proceedings from the symposium. You've talked about that often.
Yes.
So
Well,
what's different than what you're saying right now?
the next step is different, but this comes after some of the discussions on Monday, and especially want to make sure Andrew agrees with me that I need the book to be an XR this year. That's my personal feeling. We, as a group, don't have a budget to do that. So a lot of the things we wanted to do early on is not reasonable. But Andrew, do you agree that as long as I give you the book formatted in the same way as the proceedings, we can take the Future of Text Volume 5 and view it in your environment, right?
I mean, technically, yes, you won't have any images and it'll be laggy because it's way too big. But I mean, technically, it would exist. Yeah,
Okay.
it'd be a terrible experience, unfortunately.
Maybe not. We can do, we can, yeah, to be discussed. Okay, but technically. So here's the next thing. And the reason I think the notion of binding is so important is for our own system, I could have, and this is not saying we should build now at all, but I'm thinking about the notion of we all have on our own computers, we have the foundational documents as PDF because it's been printed, it's produced, it's almost a legal document. It's there. It shouldn't be a Word document, should be able to futz around with it, right? We have that, and then somebody can comment, write another document that refers to that page. So it's literally putting pieces of paper in this thing. So we have it together. So when we do searches, when we do things, it is there. It is similar to having it in Slack, Basecamp, and whatever, except you own it, you have it. You never have to worry about the server going down. You never have to worry about not paying the fees. It is yours. It also means that we can start doing manipulations on these things. So therefore, I think as long as there is an editor and a sharing mechanism, it can be, let's say, Dini would be the editor of the Sloan Foundation project PDF folder or binder. She can then even remove some of the original documents, say these have now been superseded, and put it in. And because this is a shared system using RSS equivalent, we can all have those updates. It also means that in our group discussions, if Peter writes a thing, he puts it in that we have it. It's not going to be lost in a thread of stuff, right? So the only thing in such a hypothetical system that may be outside of this is some of the smaller comments rather than a full page comment back. It would also allow us to do shared editorializing of different sets of documents and all kinds of things. I just think the notion of binding should be elevated to be something we should look at some point.
Well, I'm thinking about the way we handle metadata in the next, right? So we have, for example, turbulence is one of our showcases, right? And they have 356 works that they've published. What's interesting is they'll have a work that they'll have a web page for a work, right? And it's got some theme and blah blah blah. But in that work are 3 works, so that work contains 3 artists' work. So when we put it in the next, what we've had to do was put in the work, and then we also include the 3 works that are listed on that page, and we connect the 2. So you can look at the page, on the web space of the next, but then you'll go to the associated articles or associated works from that page as individual works, as well as association with that page. And I think that's what you're talking about. They're working in conjunction, but they also are set up as entities of its own.
I'm talking very close to that in many ways, exactly the same. The notion is that you take literally a PDF, put it into another PDF. That's how it appears.
Yeah, I mean, you do that with the website, right? I mean, you do that we're doing that in the database with PHP and MySQL.
Yeah, but I mean, On our website and our in Basecamp and in Slack and on Twitter, there are all kinds of dialogues about the work, and then there is references to original. And then we have the Sloan Foundational documents as Word, which is in a folder. So if I stop paying the domain for future text, a lot of that disappears.
Yeah.
Slack isn't necessarily searchable while you're reading the foundational document in Microsoft Word. So my selling point here really is once a statement has been made, such as we're doing this or Andrew saying I have now done this, I think it is important to freeze it and to have it solid so that in the future it can be referred to. We are doing something related to it in our record. In our massive document of transcriptions analysis of what we have here, it starts on a new page, a new day. That could be part of such a thing. So
how is this related to metadata? I'm trying to track with you. So I mean, this is quick, clear only if known. So it's in your head so clear. I'm trying to get an understanding of it. And I'm slower than you. So how is this connected to metadata? And how is this connected to our book project, our coming book project?
You are not slower than me. The way it's connected is when I did my PhD, where I interviewed you, thank you. I also interviewed Ted Nelson, who said there's no such thing as metadata. And I think to a large degree, he is right. And just in terms of that, to really answer your question, for instance, if you have a document with a sans serif S in the top left-hand corner, you wouldn't call it metadata describing the font and the location. It's just data, right? So, and I know I've said it many times before, but the notion of electronic literature to me is much more liberating than thinking about metadata, because metadata often is seen as administrative metadata, meaning a tag put on from the outside. I just mean the whole kit and caboodle. Now, how does it relate to this? It relates to the problem of how you put stuff together. So ACM is doing horrible with its technologies. I've had so many people complain recently. They make no sense, right? One of the things they did with the hypertext last year, they produced a single PDF that has all the articles in it, all the papers, as well as the papers individually. When you go to the website and download, as I have, your and Rob's paper, it doesn't clearly say what proceedings it was from. I mean, to me, that's just a level of insanity that's hard to describe, right? It isn't easy to say, oh, this is an interesting proceeding, give me the whole thing. So what this notion that I'm talking about is the paper that you download should, of course, have more information about what it is, including what proceedings it's from, in a way that allows the users to get the rest of the papers. And separately, you should be able to download a little PDF that says, in this folder, I have this DOI paper, that DOI paper, or whatever addressing scheme is used. And it has a little information about it saying, this was from a conference in Rome on these dates, videos are available on this site, all of that stuff, the wrapper stuff. So it allows, and this is why when Andrew said it would be very heavy to have this in his environment, this approach allows the user to load the binder proceedings PDF and to choose whether to get all the other stuff. Right? So if we segment this right, we can upload into Andrew's world the basic stuff, the abstracts and a few things about the future of text book. But until needed, the rest of it may not even need to be there. And the reason the notion of hiding and pinning is so important is that, Dini, you should be able to make your own editorial version of the future of text that you share with your friends.
I'm going to step back and walk through, I'm listening to what you're saying, because I do go into the ACM hypertext site and download papers, right? I did that for our demo. I did it for last year's demo for Rob and me. Going into Google Scholar and trying to find things, and then going back to the ACM hypertext site and pulling things down from the university catalog or my own personal downloads, if they're working. And all I really want when I search for articles and have articles is just the bibliographical information. That's all I want. I want to know where it came from, who wrote it, when it was published, and how to get back to it by clicking on a link. Like, what's the DOI for that? And I think that's all I want. I don't want anything else, because then it becomes, then I'm reading data about data. The metadata we make available in the next is not for the common everyday user. It's for scholars, right? And it's to document the work for long-term accessibility in 100 years, right? But people that go to the next, because I'm watching them, I look every day, 3 times a day, at people's actions in the next. And what they do is they go to work, they view it. I don't see them moving around anywhere else except at the works themselves. They'll read the exhibition space and they go right to the work. So they're not really spending a lot of time reading metadata. And so I guess my response is, I don't want it to be cumbersome. I don't want it to be a lot of stuff. I just want to get the article and see if I need it. So if I get the abstract and I say, oh, wow, this really fits Rob and me. Rob and I were working on the project last year. Finding anything about VR and hypertext was like pulling teeth, right? And I pulled up like 7 different articles from ACM Hypertext, and hardly any of them had anything to do with what we're doing.
In this
Tell by
context,
the abstract, right?
in this context, I would say the abstract is metadata. No, let me rephrase that. The fact that the system knows that in the document, this part of the document is the abstract, that is metadata. Like in LaTeX, it's literally marked up top and bottom. The text in here is the abstract because they hide it and whatever, right? So I am not talking about a lot of metadata like you would have in your library, in your museum, etc. That is important metadata, but I'm generally just talking about the stuff that you need to show the stuff.
You mean display?
Yeah. By the way, guys, an interesting thing, I saw an ad for Volvo, a new small electric Volvo today, at the back of New Scientist, and it said to buy, visit a dealership or buy online. There was no URL. So the notion of addressing now doesn't have to be spelt out. People know how to search Volvo. I thought that was quite interesting. Since addressing...
This survey that we're doing, is this for author and reader?
Primarily it's for author, yes, to help me figure out where to put my effort for a new version. Maybe we will learn something useful in a more general sense. Now, when it comes to being able to make a binder, the only way you can make a binder is if the system knows how to put stuff in it. So that comes down to the notion of addressing. One thing that's interesting is when you read a DOI, even if it's printed, it generally works if you type it in. So that's very good. And then you have file names and all of these things. I'm wondering if we were to think along the lines of the binder for the proceedings of ACM, which they may not make, we may have to make it. One of the things we can do is make fake DOIs. We can make our own DOI schema because it gets transferred all over the place. And all we need to do is format it differently and it'll still connect. I don't know.
I don't think that's a good idea, because when I register DOIs for the lab, like when we put out the rebooting books and the pathfinders and all of that, we go to the library and it's registered and it becomes part of a widely known system. Making up our own DOIs doesn't make sense. And let me say this, it's interesting. You remember Scott Retberg?
Yeah, of course. He's in Bergen.
Yeah, he's in Bergen. And so he has, it's been 10 years, probably more. He developed a database called ELMSET. And it's pretty useful for people that are trying to do research and trying to figure out, like, who's Rob Swigert? And you can type in Rob Swigert and Rob Swigert's page will come up and all the data about Rob. So it's been useful. The problem with it is that it's not been, the people that have access to editing it is anybody. So it's not like Wikipedia where you have someone looking at what's being said and making sure it's correct. So if I wanted to go in there and say Rob Swigert is from, I don't know, New Zealand, I could. And people looking at that site would just say, oh, Rob Swigert's from New Zealand. And they would continue to write that down and anything they say about New Zealand author Rob Swigert. So it's been a real problem for Scott. just to finish this, he's decided to turn ELMSIT into a wiki base and Wikidata, right? Which is great. That's a good system coming out of Wikipedia. And he's hired with his $10 million grant, he's developing, he's got the people to do it. What he's suggesting now is a whole new numbering system that is different from DOIs, different from ORCID numbers. He's not going to pay attention to any of the current naming strategies. He's developing his own number system. And those of us who are partners in ELMSIT, like my lab, are expected to change our numbering system into his numbering system, which means we don't use DOIs anymore. We just use Q124 or whatever number he gets. It starts with a Q. I don't know why. Anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is when this was presented at the ELO conference 2 weeks ago, people were like, "What? No." We want it to be, we want structured data that is findable across many systems, not just ours.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you're saying, Deanie. We also submit DOI for the future of text, and Peter's helped me before by doing something called Coin, so it's kind of findable on the webpage as well. Absolutely no question. I'm thinking of lesser work that's automatically created in smaller groups, of just putting it in, just having some way to be able to search to find a specific document. Anything that's unique would work for that. But that's a huge philosophical discussion. Now, on the last point of the metadata thing for today, I just want to ask Andrew a little bit about how he is taking the JSON now, because as I put in our agenda for today, the stuff in the bracket is actually from the Sloan pitch that was approved. So I need to fulfill my part of being able to export from Reader to your system so that it can be read.
I'm not fully understanding what your question is. I'm referencing the HTML of the ACM papers, specifically the tags for things. So if it's tagged abstract, I know that, oh, there's an abstract there. That's
So,
pretty much all I'm doing.
so we
Do
have,
you need like the specific tags listed for you? I guess that would make sense.
when did we transition from the data you're working with being JSON to going into the what Mark has cleaned up for in HTML?
No, they're both this. We did them both at the same exact time. The JSON is sort of like general information. So title, authors, keywords, things like that that aren't included in the actual document itself, things that stick on top. And then in the JSON, it includes a source link. The source link is to the HTML. And we
Okay.
need that, of course, because the JSON isn't packaging the entire document. We could have gone that route if we wanted. That just wasn't what we chose at the beginning.
Okay,
Um,
fine.
so we then reference the source link, which goes to the HTML paper. And that's where I grab the actual content of the document, which includes the abstract, but also like, of course, the actual paragraphs and the headers and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So that means basically it shouldn't be that much work for my guys in Reader to export the library into JSON, have it go into your system, and everything is there except the documents. So you can see the title, author, and abstract if the abstract was available in the metadata and the JSON, for example, right?
Yeah, but the abstract's currently not in the JSON. The abstract's part of the HTML. But yeah, if you load in documents that aren't actually that don't have a working source link, the title should still show up. They just wouldn't work. I should need to put in like a failsafe to catch that because we've just been working off the assumption that every document has an actual document with it. But uh, that wouldn't be too difficult to just put in something there that maybe it displays the title a little bit lighter or something. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's here, but we can't actually read it.
So that's very, very useful. In Reader, I have the notion of pin and hide. So if you hide a document, you can't see it unless you click on a tab. There it is. You can then choose to unhide it. The reason I have it and don't delete it is I may want to find it in a search, but I don't want it cluttering my view. I have a few items pinned that I just want on top of the screen, so they're favorites. So those are two tags that, according to some of the early discussions around the system, is when you are working on a traditional display, take the same library into your headset, do manipulations, and when you're done, it is exported as a JSON back to the normal traditional library. So if you have chosen to hide something, it is now hidden there as well. Transfers the tag across. That was one of the big benefits for me a long time ago. Basically forgot it and then dug it up again in the Sloan documents. And now, I'm not saying we have to implement it now, but it is something we need to keep in mind.
Hey, Frode, the questions about your writing in your thing. I mean, I only get to pick one, but I do academic papers, I do general writing, I write articles for the web, I do commercial documents. But I'm only allowed to pick one. Can you make it so I can pick all the ones I do?
Hang on. Of course I can. I'll do
Also,
that.
some of us write fiction.
Yeah, I mean, I write creative, I do poetry. I
Yeah.
write all the time. I write in Slack a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I've added poetry and fiction. Sorry, Rob, for not having fiction before. And it's now a multiple checkbook, absolutely. The reason for that is partly the software I'm building is not it's not competing with Slack. It's not that kind of writing. It was actually Mark who suggested I try to find out more. But if the people do this kind of writing, then it fits them.
Well, I'm saying technical communication. So it's not commercial documents, but like I do a lot of tech writing, a lot of report writing. Some people think it's boring, but I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So Andrew, was that really earth-shatteringly different for you, the back and forth of the basic tags?
No, I mean, it's just very much not in our scope right now because we decided to go a different direction right now. So, totally fine. Just put it later on in the phases. Nothing wrong with, thinking about adding it.
Yeah, I just got a bit worried about what we were doing, so I went back and looked at the Sloan. And yes, the way that Dini has made faces out of it, I think is exactly the right way to go. So we will put this in a future phase, but it is important that you are aware of it so you don't design it out, so to speak.
Fruitbat says he'll
Well,
bite you if you
unfortunately, it's currently
change
kind of
things.
yeah, yeah, Dini's right. It's currently kind of designed out because um, that concept was dropped so long ago. But, that doesn't mean we can't add it back in. I'm not going to do work now that would explicitly block it off. It'll have to be developed from scratch. That's just where the project's at right now.
Yeah, I'm just not sure why that happened because we spent so many months arguing in the group over communication between desktop and XR.
Yeah, and it's technically can still communicate. I'm talking about there's no function for hiding and showing things
No,
because
no.
it just wasn't ever part of this part. So yeah, we can communicate data back and forth. That's fine. I don't have an export for the data currently working, but uh,
So for
yeah,
a, so for a stage after what you're working now, it is feasible for you to put a pin and hide or equivalent somewhere
I,
on it.
I still don't understand what that will do. Like what
Yeah,
pin does, but I get what hide is.
I'll show
I
you
s-
actually. Hang on 1 second. I have a very messy desktop, so I don't want to give you guys any shocks.
is pin basically favorite,
Yes, 100%.
but how does that work in XR when you have freely movable objects? How do you pin something like that? Does that make it unmovable? So
I
like
don't
locking
know.
it in place?
That's a very good question. It could be. The way it works in the library here is, you select something and then you control click on it or do keyboard shortcut pin or hide. So if you pin it, it goes up here with a bullet point. If you hide it, you have to click down here to go to hidden documents, which are slightly grayed out. The thinking is that if you're in XR and you pin a document, maybe in the proceedings, it's then at the top. Maybe it has a little icon next to it. But the real key is that you have an opportunity to work with so many documents there, and then you export that data back to your flat, boring system, and it means that the ones you've hidden are no longer bothering you. The ones that are pinned are right in front of you. And of course, this library view is very primitive, doesn't even have the notion of opening a proceedings to work within it. Peter.
Could we maybe introduce the notion of grouping things? Remember way back in the days of Mac Draw, they introduced the idea of the group, and I just absolutely love that. So you make a bunch of selections, you group them, and then you get to treat them as being a single entity. So if you grabbed one of them and moved it, everything else in the group would move simultaneously.
At some point, absolutely yes. That is not in the Sloan yet so far, and it's not being implemented, but we can definitely look at that. That's the notion of selecting from the hand as well. Select by certain category could be part of that. Please tell me if you disagree, anyone, since I answer that a bit too authoritatively.
So going back to metadata, which is what you wanted to talk about today, did we answer the questions or get what you wanted done?
We are getting there. Andrew and I are getting there. There are different levels of that discussion, and I now feel confident that what has been sidelined by all of us in the design in order to get something useful, which I'm happy with, Andrew has sufficient alignment with it that when we get to the point of doing more, we can introduce so just to go very back to the very beginning, this is what's very important to me. You're working with articles, papers, it's too much. Put on your headset, the library, and how many months did we discuss even defining the word library? It's a bit crazy, right?
We still haven't done that.
The collection, the grouping, Peter, to use Peter's word, the grouping of stuff that you had in your list. Now it's in the headset, you can do these amazing interactions. But the really key is, and Dini, you really highlighted the importance of annotation recently, which has brought it back in my brain. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's not cool. You do a few of those things. Some of it you will read in XR because it's amazing. But the really key thing has to be at the end of the day, take the headset off. Maybe you click an export button, hopefully not. Go back to your traditional computer, and the changes have been made. Annotations have been made plus hide and pin. Otherwise, to me, it becomes very much a demo, what we're doing only, because it shows to the user that what you do in XR doesn't matter. The result of it doesn't carry on into your other workflow.
It's interesting that you say that because you and I worked on this proposal for so long, right? We were going through this process over and over again and refining it. And so what you're suggesting is something that we really didn't talk about before, but is important to think about. What the project for Sloan is how to work effectively in XR. We did not say anything about going from XR back to our desktop computers, but it's obvious that it has to happen, right? That's a given, but it's not stated.
It is stated. It is the bracketed text under metadata is from our Sloan thing. It is quite literally saying integrated with our traditional software. I feel it's stated. Of course, it's open to interpretation.
Yeah, I think there's explicit and implicit, right? So I'm thinking about when I'm working in XR, I don't want to go back to my case study was, I don't want to go back to this. I really don't. I want to work in this XR environment and do everything in it. I do not want to have to worry about carting my laptop around or my phone. I want everything in one thing. That was the way I was envisioning this. But we're not going to be there during my lifetime, right? At some point we'll be there, but right now we're not. So what does it mean to work in XR today? It means that whatever I'm doing in XR and Apple, because it is integrated with the Macintosh. So if I do something in the headset, it's obviously going to be saved. Like I'm reading an iBook here on my iPad, I can read that same book on my iBook on my headset and have the same page pop up. That's what Apple's doing, right? And I'm doing this across 6 things right now, which is my complaint. But if we are working towards that and we are here now, it means whatever I'm doing there needs to happen here. I need to be able to just pick it up here and go to school with my laptop after having worked in my XR environment at home. or vice versa.
I do think in the future, as you say, well, let me just say, I agree with everything you said, with the addition that you may be using a headset at work and a headset at home. So it may even be between two very similar environments. It will just be very, very important to be able to transfer the things across.
I think what we're going to have, I mean, my prediction is we're not going to have a headset, it's going to be glasses, and they're going to be carried in our pockets or worn, on our faces like this, and they'll be augmented, and we're just going to have them all the time. And that'd be great. I mean, that's what I was hoping Google Glasses would be. I was seeing that as maybe a harbinger of what I can get away with in the future, but it didn't happen. But we're not there yet.
That'll be one way of doing it. I do think that even in 50 years, there'll be a myriad of different ways. Sometimes you don't want anything on your face. You don't want glasses either. And also with glasses, it doesn't cover your peripheral vision. So sometimes you want to be in a room that is entirely synthetic. Other times you want it, it's going to be many. And that's why it's so important that this data is portable. So what you do in one set of glasses and another one follows through with whatever annotations you do. And what I think we have learned and made progress on in this project is, excuse me, in the beginning, it was very much, I felt anyway, focus on, in my headset, I have this thing there, that thing there, and that's the layout, 3D, blah, blah, blah. I go somewhere else, it should be the same. Because then we had all kinds of coordination issues. That's not as important as I've said, this is important and this is rubbish. So my value judgments need to carry across more than spatial judgment. Of course, they can be the same thing. Like Peter was saying, if you cluster something, to have that carry across would also be a useful annotation. But this is why to be able to take from the traditional into the headset and back will be very important, I think. The little video I just linked to here is like 10 seconds long. That was one of the kind of early thoughts, 7 seconds. That we looked at, of course. Complete fakery.
But going back to metadata, and I'm keep going back. We have to have a metadata standard that we're using, right? And so what we did with the next is that we use mods, which is what the Library of Congress uses. And we modded mods, or we extended mods, and then we extended it a second time. So now we're on our metadata 3, ELMS 3. And so if we're going to be using a set metadata schema, what is that going to be? And are we going to be modifying it? And if so, what is that going to look like?
I think you're now talking about administrative metadata. So this Congress metadata wouldn't include things like headings inside a document, right? So I'd look at different categories, like structural metadata is things like headings. Connective metadata is things like references. Administrative data is basically how a library would deal with the information. Then you have accessibility metadata, all the stuff that you've done to such great detail, Dini. The standards that we have here so far is based on LaTeX and BibTeX because visually it's really, really simple stuff. And we put that into JSON for transmission. And one of the amazing things I think about the age we're living in now is as long as there is an intro description of what the metadata is, an LLM will be able to parse it. That's crazy. Like if I put one of our documents into Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, say, what metadata can you find here? It'll say, according to the visual meta, I have the following. And it can put it in any format we want. That's just, yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think what I'm talking about is organizational metadata. Like how does a library organize information for a library?
Yeah.
What goes on the shelf and where does it go on the shelf? And what other things are around it? That's the kind of metadata I think of. And as a scholar, when I'm working with documents, when I'm working with articles, metadata is different than keywords, right? Although they can be the same. There's some similarities. The author's name can be a keyword.
Yeah, I would say keywords are a subset, a type of metadata. And I think it's going to be more and more interesting what is metadata that was there at the creation of the document, metadata added by the user, metadata added by volume manipulations, metadata added by different LLMs, and why. So the differentiation and having a better literacy amongst people of what types of metadata are absolutely going to be a key thing.
Yeah, and there's personal metadata. I mean, that's what my annotations are all about. So when I read the book and I I look at the index, and the index is great, but I don't think in the same way as the author did or whoever made the index or whatever AI they use to pull out data. If I'm looking for anything that has to do with, I don't know, Tinker and Bell keys, Rob, right, from a hypertext, I won't find that in an index, but I'm looking for every instance of Tinker and Bell keys in the book, every mention. That becomes my tag, right? And under the metadata, that would be functionality.
I'm not sure I would call it functionality. I would call it a function if you do a kind of a show me all the attributes of that. But I think
Do you know what Tinker and Bell, do you know what Tinker and Bell keys are?
absolutely no idea.
Okay, then it's functionality. It's a really cute little thing that Mark Bernstein developed for highlighting hypertextual links before there was any kind of methodology to do it. And you'd have to hold down on an Apple keyboard only the Option Command key, and whatever was a hypertext link would show up as a little box on that screen. And then you click on the box and it will take you to the link. But if you open that page up, the screen up, it's not, the boxes aren't there. You have to use your Tinker and Bell keys, your finger on the two keys, Tinker and Bell like magic, to evoke those boxes. So it's a cool little exotic functionality, as Mariusz Pozarski calls it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I misunderstood that. Thank you for catching me on that. But what you're bringing up now is really, really important. And Andrew, this really relates to what you're doing. One of the things I talked about to people today is I want to get rid of the notion of accessibility because I think it's very patronizing. I think we should build systems that are really custom to everybody, right? Because we all have our little quirks. So to single someone else, like you have some issue here, like some of my friends who are autistic say that in some areas this is superpowers, in other areas is really bad.
That's what we've done with the Next. That's our stance in the Next, Frode.
Yeah.
But accessibility is 5 different things, right? It's being able to get your hands on it. It's accessible. It's saved, right? Anytime you want it, it's there. You can understand when you touch it, when you get it, you understand it, right? You know what to expect. So accessibility is not just meaning that, I have disabilities and I have to see it. It means 5 different things in my world. And we're not using accessibility like, oh, are you like injured? Can you not use your hands? But that is part of accessibility. That's one of the 5.
Yeah, no, exactly. So the notion here is when dealing with information, you have the kind of actual information, let's say the document, right? That is one of the things. The other thing is the environment where the information exists. So if you're reading a hypertext paper, all other hypertext papers are part of that environment. So we need to be able to provide ways for the user to interact, not just with the paper, but everything that relates to it.
That's accessibility. That's one of the facets of accessibility. They're all there. They're all accessible for you.
Yeah, and right. But another really important aspect of this is you yourself, right? So something as simple as Dini prefers not to have a completely black background when it's in dark mode. Someone else prefers a slight charcoal or full black or whatever it might be. It sounds trivial, but at least for my eyes, when I read, it has to be what fits me, otherwise I get fatigue. So that is an example of when you go into an environment, you really should be able to bring with you your preferences when it comes to these things automatically. But also, and this I think Peter will like, the preferences of your prior knowledge. So when you go into a working environment, you should be able to communicate to the environment that I know a little bit about electronic literature, but a lot about biology, whatever it is, so that the system in relative ways can better understand what should be highlighted for you, what should be drawn out, and what should be shorter. So that's the whole accessibility and all these things. It's great as a general thing, but we now need to get to the point where the human is brought to the information in a context. and we lost 2 people. Should we just hide, guys, while when they come back? But Andrew, this is partly why I talk about the JSON and the metadata and stuff, because at a certain point we have to make it a lot richer what travels around. And we spent tons of time on it, and now thankfully you're implementing one version of it. Andrew, now that you have full attention, any questions or comments about where we are?
No, not really. I've been asking stuff whenever I feel the need.
And you're going to go to the lab and look at some of those things on the headset, right? Gucci and so on.
I could not hear anything you just said. I was just getting poor connection.
All right.
I heard Gucci. I guess that's one word.
Yes. When you go to the lab, you're going to do the Gucci experience and stuff, right?
Yeah, if it's installed, I would love to.
Well, I'm sure you can download it. Dini shouldn't mind. She's going to watch it too. It's free anyway, so you can just ask her. I'm sure she'll do it.
Cool.
It's just, in so many ways, so cool, in so many ways, so just ridiculous. But I think it's important for us to play with it. Okay, now that I have you, Andrew, for another minute, if we decided that when you read the document in your environment, we're going to have it wrap and be 2 column, like 2 pages, what level of effort would that be with your current setup?
Like still scroll vertically, but have 2 columns.
Yeah, I guess that doesn't make sense. Well, let me ask you another question, since that was stupid. We currently have a table of content, which is great. What I think we really should have is, okay, sorry, let me explain why. In Reader, if the document has visual meta, if you press the right arrow key, it goes to the next page. If you press the down arrow key, it goes to the next heading. So it makes it really quick to go through our book of articles. You can check, all the headings, so all the articles, and then you read them, right? What do you guys think about in Andrew world? We provide a functionality like that. So when you have a long scrolling document, you have a really easy way to jump to the next section. So it literally just takes the heading.
Yeah, I have that though. That's if you select in the table of contents, it jumps to the header.
Yes, but a button that doesn't, which is perfect, and we have that on the side. But I'm talking about a means through which you're reading something and you do an action, and whatever heading is next, you don't have to find it and click on it. Whatever is next goes to the top.
I'm going to propose something. These are ideas that could be written down for potential next steps. I'm hoping we're not talking about getting this ready for this year 1, because we've already got a design doc that's our Bible. So can I recommend that these are things that we can talk about like year 2 potentially?
But Dini, you were out of the room. I'm just teasing. I'm saying, but you were out of the room.
I know. I told Andrew that I'm never leaving ever again. God knows what happens when I leave the room.
Probably very wise.
No, but I think there's a lot of things we want. There's so many things we want. There's my darling. Come back here, darling. Hello. How are you?
Mama, can I have a quiz? Emily.
You know what? I'm going to say this. Every time I see you, Edgar, you look more and more like your mother. You used to look
don't
just
give
like
him
your
such
father.
a big compliment.
You're like your father here, but your mother here. It's like you've got dad, mom. And that's a compliment for both.
Dini, you can say it to Emily. Emily, come in. She was saying to Edgar.
Hello. Yeah.
He looks like more like you every day.
Oh, are you happy to hear that?
He's got Frode from here up. He's got you from eyebrows down. So do me a favor, Edgar, take your daddy's glasses and put them on for a second.
That would be funny. Here, use your hands so you don't get it.
Let's see if I can be wrong here. Maybe it's the glasses that's doing it. No, you're still your mom's. You got your mom's face here.
Yeah,
glasses don't.
that's so true.
Okay.
But he's got this. He's got this hairline in the hair of Frode's.
Yeah, it really is.
Very
We can
cool.
always have to. We'll give him
Okay, you guys
Blackberry.
can go now. You can go now.
Bye.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed. Frode enough.
Okay, I'm going to persist on just the questioning of this. So I just had this vision today of being in the environment and being in focused reading modes. You have the full text of the document. This is, sorry to have to refer to him yet again today, but Doug had a command in NLS Augment where you jump to the next heading, which provided really rapid way to go through a document because you didn't have to go through pages of stuff. You had the headings. So what do you guys think about the notion of an action? You have a document in focus, so we know it's in focus. It's the only one in focus in front of you. Maybe even like a movement like this or like this. What do you think? Just in theory, not saying we build it now, obviously.
To do what? What would it do?
It will go to the next top level heading.
I'm gonna say something, and I don't mean to be rude because I really like you, and I have a hard time understanding how to use reader and author. I can't wrap my mind around all the shortcuts and actions. I do have a hard time with that. And so I'm going to say this also. There was a game I like a lot called Unravel. It's a great game on a console. It has 17 different things you can do at the console. Andrew, have you ever played Unravel before? Yeah. I mean, it's just so console heavy. I could never play it properly. I'd love to watch other people do it who are better at 17 different ways to play the console. All I want to do is go forward, go backward, and jump. Simple. And that's how I want to work with my documents. One of the questions you ask in your survey is, do you want a lot of functionality? The answer is no. I don't. I don't like Word. It's too functional. I want something really simple. I just want to fucking write. I want to save it. I want to delete it. I just want to write. I want to drop images in it and size them and call it good. With Word, I've got too many things.
Too.
Huh?
I want to navigate. I want to be able to jump chapter by chapter or section by section. I like the idea of being able to jump through the headers.
So, Rob, this is exactly what it does. So it's quite normal in PDF viewer to use arrow keys or spacebar, right? So if I now go arrow right, it goes through all the pages, normal reading. But if I now go arrow down, it jumps to the next level 1 heading. So in our case, it jumps from meeting to meeting. I think that is very, very simple. If you look at our meeting record so far this year, we have over 400 pages. But this, it means that if you're reading 12th of June, you go through it. Now that's not the interesting one. Arrow key down, boom, at the next meeting. Didi, do you think that's a complexity? Right for next page, down for next section?
Well, it's something that people don't know. I mean, we're going to have to teach them.
Yeah.
We're overlooking something, guys. That's a keyboard. Take a look at your keyboard. How many keys do we have? They're all very distinct. You're not going to confuse them with one another. You go into XR, especially with hand tracking, you now have 0 buttons. Everything is gesture based. And now we have to figure out how many gestures can we make that are unique and don't trigger accidentally.
Absolutely.
And then also keep it in mind the faulty tracking. If your hand is more like this, it loses track of what's going on. And when you keep all those things in mind, it takes the scope of, oh, we can do anything to, okay, we get like only a couple gestures that are going to reliably work.
Yes.
And this has been the struggle we have for ages. It's not getting the function of jumping to the next header that's so hard. It's finding a gesture that makes sense for it and one that doesn't just trigger accidentally all the time. Every time we've tried adding in a gesture for some unique function, it's been rough and we've removed it in every single example. We always fall back on pinching. and pointing. It's like it's the one thing that is reliable for people. I guess
Ex
we do have the rotate the hand. That one kept. So I was wrong about that.
No, no, absolutely. On all those very, very important points. That is the challenge. And this was a challenge we didn't realize going into this. That was going to be the challenge. The issue we have also is, as you pointed out earlier today, we don't have a hold, as in you can't just touch something and the system knows that is now active. So you can then do hands things, which is why you pointed out hands have to be for universal actions. Absolutely. So it is a challenge, but I don't think we should necessarily, if we find actions that we feel really would benefit us and other users, it's still worth investigating at some point. But on this particular point, Rob, the notion of an arrow for the next page, an arrow for the next chapter, you like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not so sure,
But
right?
in Pages, I have the table of contents on the left. I can just select a chapter I want to jump to.
Yes, you can, but there is a fundamental difference when on a computer with a keyboard because, first of all, the table of content does, in a book like ours, it takes a lot of space. It has to be scrolled. It doesn't actually fit on a 27-inch screen. But also, every time you want to go to a next chapter, you have to move your cursor to that location and click. Whereas if you have a key assigned, such as the down arrow, every time you press it, it is a known action that will happen. Next article. This comes out of the work that Fabienne asked me to do, which was to take the book and put it on a wall, but only the first page of every article. So the first page itself became kind of a preview. So this way, you can instantly jump to the next article. But yeah.
But that's only the next article. You can't, there's no random access.
Of course there is. You still have the table of contents. Absolutely. That's really, really important. And you have other ways of navigating. The point is, we have an issue in XR particularly of reachability. Now, I really praise Andrew constantly on having made an amazing laser pointer, but it's still not as tangible, right? So that's why having the ability, when you're reading even an article, you read the abstract. If you scroll, you have to find the scrolling, you have to do it up, this and all of that, even though it's better now. It would be nice, I think, to be able to do a thing, and then you're at the introduction. You read enough, then you're at this other thing. Because then you get the benefit of combining fully scrolling text with paginated text. Because with scrolling texts, I don't know if you're the same as me, but when I scroll on a phone, once I've read about a third down, also on a computer, I tend to scroll up. Very rarely I'll read the whole thing. But if I know that I can do, as long as I don't need to read, if I'm jumping around, as long as I know how access to the next section, it's quite helpful. Peter, you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the use of the concordance functionality in DevonThink. I don't know if you've worked with it or not, but it has a concordance of all of the words that are in your currently open data files. And when you select a term in the concordance, it immediately pulls up all of the sentences where that term appeared with a couple words on either side of it. And I find that is just an incredibly powerful tool for finding things that I'm looking for that would be hard to get at if I was just coming at them from a table of contents perspective or from manually searching.
Yeah, interesting. Right. So I guess no further comments on the notion of how to navigate in a document. But the student competition, the symposium, and the book, I guess we put that into the next meeting because we're running a bit low. Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew, are there any gestures that you know of that we have that are reliable that haven't been used?
Uh, hmm. Technically the wrist tap because that's now available again, but we already have a plan for that. Um,
Okay, let me ask you another.
no, I guess I don't. But that's how we experiment. I'm not saying they don't exist. I just think we need to, if we want to add a new function that's supposed to be easy, we need to come up with a good gesture for it and do a lot of theory behind that. And like simple things like, yeah, like a swipe, that kind of makes sense, right? But then start thinking about how many times you just move your hand like that in just everyday functionality, and suddenly you realize that's a terrible function. Um, so it's one of those things that our first instinct isn't always um, going to actually work once we start to think about the testing behind it. And if we can come up with some of those use cases before we develop it, it saves a bunch of time. Um,
Absolutely.
Not that we have to, but I no longer have the time to do sort of side tangents in preparation for Poland. So we can either go back to doing the side tangents once Poland's over, totally fine. Or if we want to get stuff done quicker, we have to do sort of like our own testing outside of the project and then come back with that finding.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with all of that, utterly. I'm just thinking currently focus just moves closer, right?
Yeah, mostly.
Right. So should we maybe have a mode that basically means focused and is the current interaction thing? So I'm thinking you've gone to the point of reading a document, not the abstract. The full document is in front of you, and you lock it into place. So the system knows this is the area of interaction. Then we can apply commands using the non-dominant hand, right?
If you have some way of identifying which element you want to apply the functions to, absolutely.
The whole document. So
Right.
for
Well, that would
instance,
be one of the elements.
yeah, but I'm saying not necessarily text inside it. That's a bit more complicated. I just mean, yeah, Peter, you've been very patient. Please go.
Okay, I was thinking of Jeff Raskin's work and talking about quasi modes, and maybe that could be a solution for our problem of triggering things. Andrew, could we tell if you were, say, pinching with your left hand while swatting your right hand in a direction that might otherwise too readily trigger when we didn't want to trigger? So that only if your left hand was pinched would we pay attention to the swatty gestures that you're making with your dominant hand, and thus be able to avoid accidentally triggering it with normal gesticulation while we're talking.
Yeah, that would absolutely work. In general, the swiping the hand thing, it was one of the things we tested, and it's a bit finicky. But yeah, having like it be a two-handed gesture would definitely reduce the chance of it accidentally triggering.
That's what
Of course, that makes it harder for the user to learn the new functions. So it's like, yeah, it's give and take.
that's why we have Peter the hand menu. So you select that's exactly that to have the two-handed.
On a menu, a monomenu.
Yeah, but it when you're pointing at something to do that, that's a bit tricky. But okay, since we're winding down here, let me just see what the feeling of the room is. We're in this thing. It actually looks amazing now. We're reading a document, trying to go through it. We're actually working. Would you guys prefer, instead of having to point scroll or point menu, or rather in addition to have some method through which you can just, whatever next heading, hoist it to the top of the screen? I would find it very useful and impressive. Is that exciting or not for you guys?
It is for Rob.
I think so. I think it's a good way to go quickly through a document if there are headers.
Put that in our
I'm,
coming list.
I think it's fine to experiment with in the future. I personally don't see the use since you can already jump around in the table of contents. Like personally, when I'm like going through something, I'm either going to read the whole thing or I'm going to jump to just specifically what I want. I'm probably not going to be like going chapter by chapter randomly. I'm going to like pick I want that chapter. So that's what the table of contents does for me. But I realize I'm also not the main use case here. So
The
that's
problem
just my personal.
the problem I have with the table of content is it's often quite limited what is in it. Very often I find I need to read the beginning of that section to have a clue what it's really about. So that's why the notion of being able to quickly see within the document, and also personally, my experience to find the time and cognitive load it takes to find the menu item, right? Even if it's always there on the screen, it's very different from next, 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 right? But also it's a bit of what we're used to.
Before we go today, Frode, have you gotten your acceptance at the Human Workshop?
Yeah, I just got it while we are having the meeting. They said it has to be a blue sky paper. That's fine by me. They said it was not academic enough to be a proper paper, but what do I care?
I was going to say I got my reviews back too. It's so interesting, Rob. You'll love this. I got 2 good scores, right? I got a good and let's see, score 4, score 3. Let's see, score 4, score 5. So I got a 4 and a 5. This is Marish and me. And what's interesting is that the first one says fairly well written. And it sounds like Mark Bernstein all the way through. The next one says, oh my God, this is so well written, so easy to read. I love it. It's like, it's Andrew, this is what we call the reviewer number 2 syndrome, right? You'll get 5 reviews back, and there's like 4 of them going, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And then reviewer number 2 is like, this sucks. This should never even be brought to the table. You know?
Yep.
It's so funny. But it's obvious it's Mark Bernstein because the references made are so Bernsteinian, Rob.
Uh-huh.
I
Gotcha.
love it. I love it. Anyway, but you're going to present your paper at the Human Workshop, right?
Yeah. As a blue sky paper.
Okay.
So
What's the difference between, what's the difference? You're still at the Human Workshop.
Well, this is a key thing that Mark entertained us with a few weeks ago in one of the meetings is when reading the proceedings, it is not really shown what is a blue sky, what is a long paper, what is a short paper, and what is a poster. But he wants that information in our system because for academics, a poster is a little bit, a long paper is, oh my God, this is in-depth academic brilliance. Short paper, less so. Blue sky paper is, okay, somebody had an idea. There's no scientific rigor here, but let's see if it's inspirational. Huge value judgments. Doesn't impact me one bit. I'm a blue sky kind of a person anyway, but it is the kind of metadata that is not transparent to the novice person in this thing, the new person rather, and should be available for future reading.
Well, here's my thought on all of this is that if it's in the hypertext, if it's been accepted to the hypertext conference at any level, it's acceptable reading. So there should be no value judgment beyond that. The value judgment is it in the conference? The second thing is I love posters. I love to go and see posters because that's the beginning, that's the seed of an idea, or it's the process or the methodologies. It's part of a larger project. It's showing a slice of something that I find very interesting. Then you could track it as it develops over time. And I've seen this happen at the ELO conferences and stuff like that. So I find rather than value judgments, it just tells you where in the development a project is or an idea is.
Yeah, no, that's completely valid.
And blue sky may not be academic at the moment, but it's like, I've got this great idea. What do you think? And the people are like, yeah, great idea. And then you take it to the next step. Okay, now I'm going to do a poster. Okay, now I'm going to do a small paper. Now I'm going to do a large full-blown paper. It's like step, 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 step. And it's not like graduate students do this and academic, full-fledged, full professors do that. And it's like, even I have done posters with ideas at conferences. Like, I'm just thinking about this. What do you guys think? Feedback. Give me feedback. So rather than see it as not good or whatever, not acceptable, it's just different because it has to be. If it's in AUC of hypertext, it's good.
That's absolutely totally valid. I'm sorry, Andrew, I have another question for you. Actually for everybody, when we are reading now, you point and you do this to scroll, right? You pinch and you move up. That's the scrolling. I mean, I'm not remembering weirdly, right? But what
No,
about,
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. I
so in,
wasn't sure if this is rhetorical or not.
oh, okay, that's semi-rhetorical. So here's the question. What about if I do this, horizontal? Could that be parsed as go to the next heading?
Yeah, that might work. Um, like just functionally. I guess it would have to be if you drag it far enough. It wouldn't just because when you're going up and down, you're always moving left and right a little bit. So you wouldn't want that to trigger accidentally.
It would be,
It's like if you drag far enough, it then like goes to the next header. It'd be a little bit, huh? Yeah, I think that could probably work. It'd be a little unexpected,
there will
but
be a threshold, absolutely, that will have to be reached. It can't be just a little jiggle, absolutely not. I'm just, for this kind of thing, I'm just thinking this would have to be a taught thing. It would have to be a told thing, this kind of an interaction, right? Someone putting on the headset, and we're just say, do this, but if you want to skip to the next one, do that.
yeah, I don't think that's the worst. It
Ha,
definitely feels
thank you for
possible.
the, Danny, I got an official compliment from Andrew. It wasn't the worst.
Hey, he's like this with me too, and I love him anyway.
Yeah, there's no question
What
of
he
it.
said one day, I thought it was so funny. We were talking, we were having this conversation. He goes, I can't believe I talked to my supervisor in this way.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, like, whatever. We get stuff done, whatever. That's the point. There's
Yes.
not a lot of hierarchy in the lab.
But
And speaking
okay,
of lab, I got to get going to my L lab meeting.
yeah, it was very useful. Look forward to seeing things next week, Andrew. And yeah, very good, guys. And have a good weekend. I'm going to Norway tomorrow, so I will be joining you from Norway next week.
What are you
Uh,
doing in Norway?
just being there, family, Edgar, holiday, home.
Safe
Uh,
travels.
no plans. Thanks very much. See you all soon. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.